If you haven't seen this video. Oh, dude, there's people that haven't seen it. Dope. Yes, I love showing people this video. It's such a good video. It's like, it is the explanation, I think, for why the Democrats have become so despised by their voters and why Republicans have continued to grow in power.
Say, for the sake of argument, you're a Democratic president finishing out your last year in office. There's not a lot you're expected to do as a lame duck except endorse a Democrat for the upcoming election, but then early in the year, something unexpected happens. A Supreme Court justice dies suddenly in his sleep. Vacancies in the Supreme Court are infrequent as it's a lifetime appointment, so death and the occasional resignation are the only causes of an empty seat. And when it happens, it's the president's job to get the seat filled. So you set about the task of picking a successor, probably the last major decision you will make as president, when the Republican Senate tells you, yeah, we're not going to confirm anyone you nominate. And you say, well, if you think you've got the votes, you can reject my nominee and I'll pick someone else. And they say, oh no, we're not going to vote against your nominee. We're not going to hold a vote. What are you talking about? I haven't even nominated someone yet. We're not going to convene a vote on anyone you nominate. But that's your job. I make a nomination, the Senate holds a vote, and democracy decides who sits on the bench. Well, that's not what we're going to do. You're a lame duck. The next president will decide who sits on the Supreme Court. That's not how this works. That's not how we've ever done things. Certainly not when your party's had a lame duck in office. Well, it's what we're going to do. And you say, that's not what the Constitution says. And they say, the Constitution does not explicitly say we can't.
Trump talking about the third term. I'm trying to see if I can find the... Here it is.
I've raised a lot of money for the next race that I assume I can't use for myself, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know. I think I'm not allowed to run again. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to run again, Mike? I better not get you involved in that argument. I've raised a lot of...
Because technically the Constitution doesn't explicitly say whether it's about 3 consecutive terms. Ha 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 ha.
Your wife has a saying for when Republicans act up. They go low, we go high. So in considering your current predicament, you try to think of what taking the high road might look like. The Republicans have always accused you of being too far left, so after some deliberation, you select a middle-of-the-road, utterly uncontroversial judge, the kind of candidate a functioning Senate should have no trouble confirming. You make a display of embracing the spirit of compromise, in the hopes they'll change their tune, or at the very least be shamed into convening a vote rather than admitting this had nothing to do with the timing or the nominee and was just about refusing to collaborate with a liberal. In response, the Republicans announced that not only will they still not convene a vote, some say that should a Democrat win the election, and they don't even know who the candidate is yet, they will hold the seat vacant for however long it takes to get a Republican in the White House. You didn't call their bluff. They are all too happy to admit that this is absolutely about dicking over liberals and guaranteeing as many conservatives as possible in the...
No, it only says you can't be elected twice in a maximum of 10 years, not even a debate. It's clear you can only be... It's clear as you can be with the English language. So what you're saying is he can just run again with J.D. Vance as president, and then J.D. Vance steps down immediately, is what you're saying. So we get to have a third term. Yeah, now you're talking. Yeah. Now we're talking. In
the Supreme Court. There is no official policy for what to do if one party simply refuses to do its job. But there is a legal argument that if the Senate refuses to vote on your nominee, they are,
This feels like QA testing for a game.
in effect, giving you permission to appoint a judge without their approval. Link in the down there part. This is technically a little...
Sorry. Someone just linked this way. Let me just make sure. Proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to provide that no person shall be elected to the office of president more than 3 times. This is good.
Extra constitutional, but it is the law in many similar scenarios, and certainly if they're going to break the rules, you're within your rights to bend them. But they go low, we go high. How can you criticize them for going outside the Constitution if you're going to do it yourself? So being the grown-up, you grit your teeth and do nothing. Seemingly there's nothing to do but publicly shame them, keeping a running tally of how many days your nomination has sat on senators' desks without a vote. You can play this as keeping your integrity, the Democrats seizing the moral high ground. But in response, the Republicans sees the Supreme Court. Their guy wins the election, you finish out your term, and Republicans will put one of their own on the bench. And just before you leave off,
try 3. And then when we suggest, hey, Democrats, maybe you guys should stack the court. Well, we can't do that. That would be wrong. That would be wrong. We can't do that. We can never stoop to their level. Name of the video, Alt-Right Playbook, you go high, we go low.
Office, and the new guy is inaugurated, and your nomination expires after 293 days without a vote. Nearly 3 times the previous record, a Republican senator predicts that, under the new administration, the Democrats, the minority party in the House, Senate, and now Supreme Court, will be the biggest obstructionists history has ever seen. Think of the position this puts Democratic senators into. They have been preemptively denigrated for the exact behaviors Republicans have relied on for the last 8 years. After 2 terms of misuse, every means of obstructing an unfit executive branch.
Yeah, the Dems get to win on moral high ground, and we all lose our rights. Excellent. Love that trade-off.
From filibustering bills to shutting down the government rather than approve a budget proposal, has just been defined as going low. Worse, in the event of a Supreme Court appointment being literally stolen by the opposing party, it might be defensible to not convene a vote on whomever that party nominates, except that's exactly the tactic Democrats have spent 10 months condemning. If everything that might restore democratic norms is tainted by the Republicans who violated those norms in the first place, then the only honorable move left is compliance. Give Republicans whatever they want, confirm their judge as quickly and smoothly as possible, treat the situation like it's fair, because that's what they should have done when it actually was. This is, somehow, going high. And that comment from the Republican senator belies the truth. They know what they're doing, and they're not ashamed. They know Democrats aren't obstructionists. They're counting on it. When one party can be relied on to do the exact opposite of your worst behavior, good strategy is to do to them as destructively as possible whatever you don't want them to do to you. The new Republican norm is you go high, we go low. Now, this is a long-standing Republican thing, and we'll talk about how the alt-right comes into it by and by. And though it's effective, it's not sophisticated. I mean, I just got finished with my intro and I'm already out of things to say about it. So let's turn the camera around and ask not why the technique is popular, but why Democrats keep falling for it. On the face of it, it would appear Democrats are a lot more concerned with being called hypocrites than Republicans are, which would seem a very solvable problem. Republicans are going to yell so much for the tolerant left, no matter what form our opposition takes, so ignore them. But clearly it's not that simple, or we wouldn't be having this problem. Republicans are striking at something more fundamental to American liberalism that makes these charges of hypocrisy hard to ignore. So, what's wrong with liberals? The modern American Democrat is in an unenviable position. You need 2 things to win an election: votes and funding. And there are a number of things that voters care passionately about and that they have no hope of ever getting from Republicans, but unfortunately for Democrats, they are the exact things big-ticket donors despise, which is why Democrats in very secure districts who tend to run unopposed are the ones most willing to talk about them. The left is, in fact, a very heterogeneous group with a mountain of conflicting interests and decades of infighting. So it's very hard to appeal to all of them and wealthy donors. Republicans don't have this problem, or at least they don't have it as bad. Despite many, in some ways, even more passionate and fundamental differences, conservatives value loyalty and in-group cohesion. And this keeps them coming together every 4 years in a
half the people who are in the Trump camp don't even like Trump or what he stands for. Tucker Carlson has text messages that were found in, I think it was because of a subpoena in court, that he doesn't like Trump. And he was literally he literally was texting his homies saying, dude, I cannot wait for Trump to not be in office anymore. The content is so boring. I hate covering it. The React content sucks when he's in office. You think Ben Shapiro, Mr. Wet-ass P-word, likes Trump? You know, the guy hiring prostitutes? You know, the guy who can't read a fucking single verse in a Bible? Who was holding the Bible upside down? Who literally said, what's it called? What is Tuck the Cuck about? Trump is content king. Well, not for Fox, right? Because for Fox, they need Dems in power so they can make fun of the Dems, right? 2 Corinthians. Tucker was subpoenaed. It was during the Dominion lawsuit where Fox News was alleging, Tucker Carlson being the primary face at the time, that Dominion was engaging in voter fraud. And Dominion sued and they won for, was it millions, billions of dollars? When Trump was asked, name your favorite verse, name your favorite Bible verse, he literally said, it's hard to pick. I love all of it. It's every verse. I love all of it. I really like all of it. Like, these fucking JD Vance went on Twitter to call Trump Hitler. And suddenly he's the biggest Trump fan on the planet. Every Christian has a favorite verse coming from someone who used to go to church. Yeah, it's if you say the Bible is your favorite book, but you can't pick a verse, it's a really personal question, okay? My favorite part was when the big guy says, you're a wizard, Jesus. No, he says, you're a prophet, Jesus, okay? Get it right. Fake fan, fake Bible fan, boo. Anyways, TLDR, they will back whoever is in power. Whoever has the most traction will get general Republican support. Even when it's fucking Trump.
Surprisingly unified voting bloc. It also helps that they fucking hate us, and most would sooner vote for a Republican they despise than any kind of Democrat. And lucky for them, the things conservative voters want are much more aligned with corporate interests. So building a coalition on the left is a lot of work. And faced with this challenge, there is a liberal tendency to turn away from policy and focus instead on process. Generally uncontroversial things like bipartisanship, compromise, decorum. And fair enough, the absence of these things in Washington over the years is certainly something everyone left of center is sick of, but they're not things Democrats can make happen all by themselves. And more to the point, none of them are results. They're means. Like, a willingness to compromise is not a position, and when you over-focus on how you should go about things and not what things you should go about, it fosters a certain philosophy about government that is both highly flawed and highly exploitable. The valuing of means at the expense of ends. Most people would say that the ends justify the means is a crap moral philosophy. Democrats would agree. But liberals often overcorrect to the point where thinking about the ends at all is thought of as, in a vague, reflexive kind of way, innately immoral. There's a very Enlightenment way of thinking that implies that, with the right means, the ends take care of themselves, and immoral behavior becomes functionally impossible. I want to stress that claiming political group A adheres to philosophy X is always reductive. Human beings hold many patterns of thought simultaneously and slip between them depending on context. This is less the key to understanding liberals and more one pattern of thinking liberals often slip into. But this idea of the perfect system that can only spit out justice is how liberals tend to think about democracy. We can call this values-neutral governance, and you can see why it would appeal when you're trying to sum all the demands placed on a politician. Under this thinking, you don't need to engage with the needs and desires of your constituency, your donors, or even your opposition. Because if democracy is working, everyone deserving will get what they need as a matter of course. That's what democracy is for, to divine what is right out of a cacophony of different voices. It's okay for people, even people with power, to have bad ideas, because bad ideas will always be outnumbered by good ideas. Checks and balances. Hell, you can have
this video was also made back when people like Sargon of Akkad were still relevant, and they would post about how, no, you can't just ban the opposition. The marketplace of ideas will allow the best ideas to proliferate and the worst to fall to the sidelines. Except that was bullshit. Anyone remember Milo Yiannopoulos? No, of course you don't, because he got censored to fuck and nobody knows who the fuck he is anymore. So stupid.
Bad ideas, and it won't make any difference. Provided you commit to obeying a just set of rules, only justice will ever be produced by them.
The problem is that people with bad ideas often tend to couch their bad ideas in a bunch of disingenuous ways and lies. I mean, a really good example is, honestly, timely, Ethan Klein. He cannot win on being right, so he has to lie. He has to lie, he has to splice clips, he has to manufacture consent. because he can't win on being right. He knows his ideas are worse, so he presents them differently.
And you can see how utterly paralyzed.
My favorite Milo lore was when he had to sell Virgin Mary statues on Christian QVC as punishment for being a PDF. Sapphic traffic, thank you for the 5.
It can be when half the participants of that system refuse to play by those rules. Values-neutral governance is an engine that only runs by mutual consent. Now, the system is supposed to be self-repairing. If the rules are broken in a way that it doesn't have specific contingencies for...
What's this channel called? The channel is called Innuendo Studios. This is the alt-right playbook series. You go high, we go low.
You can write those contingencies, but you'd have to pass them through Congress or the courts, as in, you'd need the cooperation of the people violating the rules. All that's left then is to fix the system without their approval. But that's going outside the rules. That's thinking about ends. And to you, the system is morality itself. You can't go outside it and still behave ethically. If the problem is people breaking the rules, you can't fix that by breaking them further. At this point, the Democratic senator usually throws up both hands and says, fuck it then, I'm going to do what the Republicans should be doing. I'm going to follow decorum and look for compromise. I will not be responsible for the degradation of our governmental system. Maybe everything still goes to shit, but nobody could claim that I didn't do my job. And once upon a time, I think they genuinely believed that this was leading by example. But I don't think today they're under any illusions that this will right the vessel, appeal to Republicans' better nature. But Democrats keep...
He actually just posted the last video of the series. Did you watch that? No. Maybe we can watch it.
Doing it. Because on some level, they genuinely believe that even when it accomplishes nothing, following the rules to the bitter end is the noble thing to do. The captain...
what I would also argue is that Democrats nowadays are just trying to line their pockets as much as they can. So they don't even care about any of the things that they claim to care about. They get to pretend to be the moral people while lining their pockets. It's a win-win for them.
Goes down with the ship. I'm using poetic understatement when I say, this can be very frustrating. To us as citizens, the most important question is what happens next? Republicans break a rule, Democrats take the high road, and what happens next? In practice, the answer is always, they get what they want, but we get a philosophical victory. But when the questions that govern our lives are, will I get shot by police, or will my kid die in an emergency room for lack of funds, unless it's gonna get my kid a philosophical blood transfusion, values-neutral governance isn't useful. And being told to trust in a system that didn't meet our needs so good before it got very obviously broken and our representatives decided it was more honorable not to fix it is, pardon my Anglo-Saxon, a bunch of bullpucky. I'll say one thing for Republicans. They believe in something. It's a bunch of classist, racist, misogynist doolally, but they believe it, and they govern according to those beliefs. There is no contradiction in blocking a liberal judge and bullying Democrats to confirm a conservative one. They want to overturn the right to abortion, and will do whatever it takes to put a pro-lifer on the bench. It is fully consistent behavior. And the problem isn't that they break a bunch of rules along the way, it's that what they're trying to accomplish is wrong. But Democrats focus on the rule breaking and not the intent behind it, because despite what Republicans will tell you, many Democrats are terrified of talking about abortion for fear that taking a stand on a wedge issue will lose them their coalition. Believing in a politics where everyone can disagree on everything and democracy sorts it out is wishful thinking born of necessity. It feels like it shouldn't need to be said that this ideal has never existed.
Dude, what type of mental illness do you have to type like this? Trump, dad's home, 3P, Austin 316 says I just whipper your ass. Cause he was a turd. This is some blue hair cope on a massive level. Are the blue-haired people in the room with us right now? Are they in the room with us right now? Open the schools. Open the schools. Please open the schools.
The idea of upending nation states, countries like the United States no longer...
Sorry, wrong video. Sorry.
At any time in history, At the very beginning, who got to own land, who got to vote, and who was or wasn't property were enshrined in our government. And none of these things were the democracy machine spitting out justice. They were value judgments made by people convinced that them profiting the most off the system was proof it was behaving rationally. Anyone who thinks democracy is impartial is going to get played. It's also worth noting that this don't worry about
I'm sure shutting down the Department of Education is going to make things better, guys. Okay.
conscience, just trust the system argument is the exact opposite of the don't worry about the system, just trust your conscience argument that liberals use to defend ethical capitalism. Just saying. But on the subject of getting played, we circle back to the alt-right itself, who, as is the trend, do the same as conservatives do, only unfiltered. What would be the effective ways to combat the alt-right? Kick them off social media, shut down their websites, cut off their funding, police their organizations as hate groups, and, if all else fails, be willing to deck someone at a counter-protest if it will prevent greater violence. So, what do they do to us? Falsely report our tweets as hate speech, DDoS our websites, try to shut down our Patreons, report us to the police as terrorists, and beat and murder people in the streets. Now, these are all things they enjoy doing regardless, but they serve a strategic purpose. If we consider doing to them any of what they've done to us, we get the performative self-flagellation. You wouldn't want to stoop to our level now, would you? And when they tell us it would be wrong to kick them off Twitter or stop them from organizing even though they keep killing people, what argument do they give us? They invoke the First Amendment. They defend not their actions, but the process. This is
like literally like... Oh God, I'm so mad that this video is still so relevant. It's hard to see this and not see the parallels. Sorry, I forgot. Not see the parallels between how Israel defenders, Israel genocide defenders talk about the IDF. Well, the IDF has to do all this terrible stuff because they're up against ISIS. I know it's not ISIS, but it's Hamas, which is basically ISIS, so we're going to call them ISIS so we can fearmonger. Also, I'm sorry, you wanted to enact a blockade? This means Israelis won't get some of their packages. I know, none of the crew members are in danger and all of them were found safe, and all you did was stop goods from entering the country, but that's evil! That's so evil. Why would you do that? Anyways, we just killed another 100,000 people this year. It's insane. It's so crazy. It's so fucking crazy.
Don't believe in universal free speech or the right to assemble, but they know we do. What the right knows and the alt-right has weaponized is that the system liberals imagine has no mechanism for engaging with beliefs. Beliefs are supposed to be things you hold in your heart, and if the system doesn't conform to them, you have to trust its wisdom. If the alt-right breaks the rules, liberals can only request that they be followed. And if the alt-right follows the rules, wears a tie, and talks like an academic, liberals can only trust that these ideas will be voted against. In either case, they don't know how to call a fascist, and they don't have any plan for fighting fascism other than to just never lose an election. And they're not very good at that. The response to this is usually, but we can't go calling our opponents fascists. What if they did that to us? To which I might first respond, what do you mean, what if? Everything they tell us not to do.
I mean, it's literally... I'm pissed that the video is still so good. Oh my God, a new wisecrack video titled Capitalism is Over. What's next is worse.
Is part of their core strategy. But also, shouldn't the determination of whether it's wrong to call someone a fascist depend at least a little on whether they actually are one? But that question can't be posed within values-neutral governance. Values-neutral governance wants rules that are correct in every scenario regardless of context. If the left and the right stand across the aisle yelling, "You're the fascist," at each other, it can condemn both or neither. But it can't determine who's the fascist without taking context into account. But in case you're wondering, these guys are the fascists, and they don't vote for Democrats. Everyone can see what the alt-right is doing, but no one knows how to oppose it within the rule set. And they never will. An action has no intrinsic value wholly separate from its outcome. A Kentucky clerk breaking the law by refusing to sign a legal gay marriage license is wrong. and a California clerk breaking the law by signing an illegal gay marriage license is right. There is a moral imperative to disobey rules when following does not lead to justice.
I mean, this seems so obvious. And yet here we are.
Some say rules are what separate us from the animals, but I've always preferred the adage that what separates us from the animals is that we have a conscience. This isn't to say we shouldn't act better than our opposition, but that maybe we shouldn't let the people going low define for us what counts as going high, and to consider that pursuing justice rather than manners may be taking...
I mean, like, this also doesn't feel like it takes that much critical thinking. Like, you... Also, yeah, we are animals. Yeah. Should we wait until we make slavery illegal to free slaves, or should you try helping to free slaves now, even though it's illegal to do that? No, we should follow the rules. Too bad that those people are still enslaved. What? That's crazy. This is what? They're literally afraid of critical thinking. It's just, I have no words. I have no words.
Taking the high road. To my understanding, being a grown-up sometimes means taking a kid's toys away until he can behave himself. It's clear from looking at Republicans that you can govern on your values and be successful. It's just a question of which values you govern on. The rules will not protect us from bad ideas. The only solution to a bad idea is a better idea.
Good video. Very good video. Highly recommend subscribing, liking, commenting.
Method.
I cannot endorse that legally or comment, unfortunately. Yeah, the double wrong video that came out recently from the alt-right playbook. Or are you talking about this one? The South Bank of Rubicon? Mike, is it this one? Is it a good one? I actually haven't seen this one. Because, like, what do you do when this is what's happening in your society? USAID whistleblower details tremendous waste.
Dr. Rob Cohen's a Army veteran and USAID whistleblower. He's got an op-ed exposing USAID waste and abuse on FoxNews.com. So how does this work? Is it really that much money that goes back to the people running the subcontractors?
Well, I have to say, I want to be careful that this is a classic case where we
Let me just say, real whistleblowers don't end up on Fox News this way.
want to avoid throwing the baby out with the bathwater. USAID
Fox News famously loves whistleblowers.
does save babies. That said, it does. The studies show that up to 7 million children have been prevented from being born with HIV by giving drugs to HIV-positive mothers while they're giving childbirth, and that's a wonderful thing. That said, there is tremendous
And I've seen people on Twitter being like, how exactly does a baby get AIDS? Well, HIV. Open the schools! Open the schools, please! Open the schools! I'm begging you, please.
industrial complex. This is well known. It's been well documented. And it's probably not unique to USAID. It's probably true across the federal government, in which most contractors charge overhead that is beyond what any reasonable business would consider appropriate. And therefore, the American taxpayer does not get the return on investment that we expect.
Yeah, so we want to save babies from getting AIDS in Africa. And that's still going to happen.